Let me put you upstairs. I'm gonna come back down.
Do you have to distribute the CD?
No, we'll see that again.
I think he would be a busy guy, even if he didn't have 5 kids. But all of those kids. Seriously busy man. Steve and Ruben, maybe you have met Guy.
Guy, no, he is like overseas.
Guys, so how long you gonna be in China?
I've been living here for about 15 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, because I moved here when I was a teenager because of my father's job. He still works at Taipei.
Okay.
We normally go to Einor and we live quite far, so so we'll try to come along.
Enjoy it.
Interesting.
Grandma is very dicey.
I have never gone to Einhorn's.
I used to do that once. I want to go by and say hello again.
Oh.
They do only 2 events a year. Usually it used to be in the Sheraton, now it's in the American Club.
So they are doing Shabbat dinner table or
Uh,
Shabbat evening?
I heard that he's not doing too well, so that's why he's almost 100 years old. He's going to be a
So isn't he skydiving or something?
That was 2 years. Yeah, one time I was sick.
Yeah, a long time. We have somebody from Israel, Guy. Ido.
Okay.
Good to see you, Ido.
See, you were in.
Yeah, traveling the last 3 weeks.
Oh, you were in the
The Balkans, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful places.
That's some fun.
Nice people, yeah.
You did some hiking.
Well, not very much, actually. It wasn't that kind of a trip. It wasn't a trekking trip. We had multiple star hotel every night. You know.
It was all in Chinese, huh?
Well, the discussion was generally in Taiwanese. It just happens that the group was a lot of Taiwanese speakers, and they would be equally comfortable, I suppose, in Mandarin. But that's not what happened. What happened is they sort of got off on the Taiwanese, but just depending on who speaks first or something, you know. So I had a lot of opportunity to listen to Taiwanese and pick up a few phrases. Taiwanese is really difficult. Dreadfully difficult.
It's not that it's difficult, it's just you want to prioritize Chinese.
Oh, sure.
It's not as useful as Chinese.
Yeah, it has, it has a complicated tonal.
So nobody talking any of the languages native to the Balkans?
Oh, well, there was some discussion about that sort of thing. Yeah, you see the Cyrillic writing.
Serbian.
Cyrillic.
Yes, the language was Serbian, Bulgarian.
Yeah. And then each of the states, the languages are mutually, some of them are mutually intelligible.
Many.
No,
Okay.
no, it's only about
There we go.
3.
Okay.
Out of like maybe 10 states, there's maybe 3 that.
Serbian, which is another name for Croatian
Yes.
almost.
Yes, okay.
Mama?
Then you
Wat was er
have
met de monasteri?
Bulgarian, which is a different language. But maybe someone would really wish can understand. You have Slovenian, which is a different language.
שכחתי את הדפים.
It's impossible to read. That is, the Cyrillic is impossible for me to read. I just
It's very similar to Latin if you pay attention.
Yeah, that's right. I would imagine
Cyrillic alphabet is not so
it's easy to learn. To read it,
Yeah.
but I just
for
Okay.
it.
I'm really sorry.
Romans, the
Okay.
Romans.
So the story goes with this billionaire, this American billionaire, who wanted to buy a television station. So to buy a television, I don't know if you bought it for a television, it cost about $1 billion. So this fellow, our fellow, he had about $600 million in capital that he was willing to invest, and he was lacking $400 million. So he was Jewish, and his wife tells him, why don't you go to Israel, to Jerusalem, to the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, and say a prayer there. You know, God, He could provide. What's $400 million for God, right? So he goes to the Western Wall, and he writes a note, he starts a prayer, and he's saying to God, I want to buy this television station, and all I'm missing is that and that. And then he notices someone standing next to him, so he goes closer to him, and he sees the guy's also praying. He's interested, he's intrigued, what's going on? So the guy says, the young guy says, oh God, I just got married several months ago, and I'm missing $200 for my rent. I need to pay rent. Could you help me, provide me with $200 I need for my rent? So this wealthy guy or fellow takes out $200 and hands it to the guy and says, get out of here, you're giving me competition. He says to him, you're giving me competition. God is busy taking your prayer for $200 instead of my prayer for $400 million. Anyway, what we want to focus today is the topic of prayer, but specifically with regards to a minyan. In fact, the source of minyan appears none else than in our parsha. In our parsha, it says about the minyan, and the people we learn it from are not exactly the best 10 people you would find. We're talking about the spies who came back from Israel with bad news. Because of them, the Jews had to wander the desert for 40 years, not to go into Israel instead of going right away. And this is as a result of their behavior. So why is 10 better than 1? That's what we want to focus today. So we're going to go through the story of the spies, the reason for sending spies. Why did Moshe send the spies all together? What made them want to go? And after the miracles, how could they lose faith in God? We know the spies came back with bad news. Instead of saying, here we are going to Israel, they came back from Israel and they're saying, we shouldn't go. We shouldn't go because there's strong people, there's giants, there's mighty people. How could we go in? How could we go in? Aren't we talking about the same people who envisioned the fall of the Egyptian empire, the 10 heavenly plagues coming from God, the split of the Red Sea? We're talking about serious miracles that unfolded in front of their eyes. What is it to occupy a land with some giants? What's the big deal? And then we'll focus on what we said earlier, the source for Minyan, and we'll try to analyze why the spies came back with bad news. What was their intent? Why did they not want to go into Israel? So here's a quote from Moshe Feinstein, one of the contemporary rabbis who lived in the United States, and he was a great scholar. And an individual forwards him a question, and he says as follows: one who feels that when praying alone he can have more concentration than when praying with the congregation, what should he do? Is minyan preferable or concentration preferable? Says Moshe Feinstein, in my opinion, he should have a minimal intention to fulfill the mitzvah of prayer, but it is better he will pray with everyone else. When praying alone, his prayer is not guaranteed to be heard. But when praying with minyan, the prayer is always heard. Interesting. So Moshe Feinstein says, praying alone, you can have concentration, but you're missing out. When you're praying with everyone else, then your prayer is always heard. Where does he take that from? And specifically, what is the reason with the 10 people? So here is the source from Shulchan Aruch. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. Every davar shebikdusha, which means everything that has of special holiness, such as Kaddish, Baruch Hu, or Kedusha, may be recited only in the presence of a quorum of 10 adult men, as implied by the verse, V'nikdashti betoch bnei Israel, and I will be sanctified in the midst of the children of Israel. A congregation comprises no fewer than 10 people. As it is written, Ad matai la'edah ra'ah, how long will this evil congregation persist? This verse refers to the spies who numbered 12, subtract 2 for Yehoshua and Caleb, and 10 remain. We're going to see in just a minute about how exactly we're going to study congregation from a group of people who betrayed the Jewish people, who betrayed God, who instead of doing what they were supposed to do, came back and made everyone wander in the desert for 40 years. And these people are the ones who teach us for Minyan. Can't you find a better example in the Torah or in history of 10 people who sat together and did positive things, for instance? Why do you study it from them? And here's exactly the question that Rabbi asked from the spies. This needs to be understood as how could it be the source of needing a congregation for holy matters is from the 10 spies who are referred to as evil congregation. Even the verse itself, who refers to them as a congregation, but adds another word, evil congregation. Surely not the type of thing you want to take for a role model. Evil congregation with the word evil appears in the original form. So here's the story of the spies. This takes place in a beautiful time in the life of Israel. They finished 14 months in the desert. After leaving Egypt, they received the Torah from God. They built the tabernacle, the Mishkan. And now, they have a whole checklist, and now everything is checked. Egypt checked, Red Sea checked, Torah checked, tabernacle checked. The last item on the checklist, going into the land of Israel. Seemingly, why not? Check. Okay, before going to the land of Israel, they're approaching towards the land of Israel. And then a proposal comes out. People turn to Moshe and tell him, why don't we gather a group of people, why don't we send a group of people, the commandos, into Israel to find out what is the best way to approach the Holy Land, what is the best way to get in, how to get in where we need to get into without getting into too much trouble, how to get the land. It seemingly was a logical request, but putting in the context of these people who had God waging war for them in all their short period with Egypt, and we're going out into the desert and so on. Moses was a little surprised with that request, but still he said, okay, you want spies, we'll send spies. If that's what you want, that's what you want. Why did he agree? Look what Rashi brings, a very interesting parable. This is Deuteronomy. And all of you, that's Moses telling. Deuteronomy is the book that Moses retold all the Torah. In the other 4 books of Moses, we're reading it as if it's, what is it called? Like a third body, where he said to him and they said to him. But in Deuteronomy, it's I said. Moses is the one telling the story. And all of you approached me and said, let us send ahead of us so they will search out the land for us and bring us back word by which route shall we, oh dear, what did I do? Here. By which route shall we go up, and to which cities we shall come? And the matter pleased me, Moses said. And so I took 12 men from you, 1 man of each tribe. What Rashi said, what does it mean, and the matter pleased me? It pleased me, but it did not please God, by the way. But if it pleased Moses, why does he mention it as in rebukes? This may be compared to a man who says to his friend, sell me this donkey of yours. He replies to him, yes. Will you give me to test it? Nesiat Vivchan. Tabikir Nesiat Vivchan? He says, yes. May I test it on mountain and hills? Yes. When he sees that his friend does not withhold anything from him, the purchaser thinks to himself, this man is certain that I shall not find any defect in a donkey. And he immediately says to him, take your money, I need not test it. Now, I too consented to your words, thinking that you would perhaps reconsider when you saw that I did not withhold it from you. But you did not reconsider. Moshe was thinking that they were trying to test him, to see whether he means business, whether he's serious. Send spies. We'll tour the land. We'll tour the land. We'll go in to see where we're going. Go in to see where you're coming from. He thought as soon as they see that he says okay, they'll just lose the need to do that, right? If somebody's trying to cover for something, they won't easily say yes to any request. But Moshe saying yes to the request, imagine that this would put them back in the right order. But it wasn't the only thing. He also tried to cut on the risks as much as he can. First of all, he was choosing his best man. He went to the tribes. He took a person of each tribe who was holy, who was righteous, who was aligned with God's will, who wanted to do what needed to be done. That's the first thing. Second thing is, he is asking them to bring back some of the fruits of Israel. Right? He knew that this was the land of milk and honey. He asked them for oranges from Jaffa, maybe, or, right? Or cherry tomatoes, if they had it then. It did come from Israel, but I guess on a much later period of time. You know, cherry tomatoes is made in Israel. So he asked them to get some stuff from Israel to prove that it's a special country. And the third thing he does in order to cut risks is he sends them to tour the land. He says, this is going to be a tour. You know, you're a traveler, you're going on a tour group. This is a taglit, a birthright. You're going in, you have some fun, you come back, you tell us how it was. That's what. No thinking of wars and occupying and giant. None of it was included. Just like when you just went touring a lot of countries. Were you there looking for some wars or some challenges, some battles, some conflicts? You were just there as a traveler, right? You only see the good sides of the country, right? Is it what?
Balkans had enough wars.
Yeah, Balkan has enough wars. Maybe that's part. Maybe that's part of the tourism, to watch all the history of the wars in the Balkan. It is, isn't it? Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Still have bullets.
Right. So, they came back, they went out, Chavtet B'Sivan. Chavtet B'Sivan, what is today? Chavtet, 7 more days in the Jewish calendar. Chavtet B'Sivan, and they came back 40 days later. What day is 40 days after Chavtet B'Sivan? No, איזה יום? 40 יום אחרי Chavtet Sivan? Tish'a B'Av. Tish'a B'Av, the 9th of Av. The most sad day in the Jewish calendar. The day in which the first temple and the second temple were destroyed. At the very same day, in a difference of 400 and something years apart, the 2 temples were destroyed. And when they came to the camp, you could see that there were 2 groups. There was 10 and there was 2. The 10 people were the spies who were up to no good. The 2 people were Joshua and Caleb. Joshua as to be the leader after Moshe Rabbeinu, and Caleb, who was a brother-in-law, is married to Miriam, who was a righteous person. That meant, well, these 10 people took with them some of the fruits like they were asked, but they came out with negative conclusions. They said the fruits were very big, huge. A grape, what is it?
Grapefruit?
Yeah, no, the grapes.
Seeds.
Grape what? Cluster?
What's the idiomatic word?
The grapes, you know, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the grape that.
The vine, the grape.
Cluster. A grape cluster. Here's how the math goes. The spies came to the valley of Eshkol, and they cut a branch with cluster of grapes. Thank you. They carried it on a pole between 2 people, and they also took some pomegranates and figs. Here's what Rashi says. They carried on a pole between 2 people. From the implication of what it says they carried in a plural, in a pole, do I not know it was carried by 2? So what does between 2 tell us? The answer is, with 2 poles, how was it done? 8 of them took a cluster of grapes, 1 took a fig, and 1 took a pomegranate. Joshua and Caleb did not take anything, for the intention of the others was to present a slanderous report. Namely, just as its fruits is extraordinary, so its people are extraordinary. So they took 8 people, they took like 2 sticks, they made it like an X, right? So there's X. So we had another X, 2 X's, that's how they held. It was such a grape cluster, they needed 8 people to carry it. 1 person carried a pomegranate. When's the last time you held a pomegranate in your hand? He was holding it, 1 person, and another person held a fig by hand. And they meant to say that these are very big and extraordinary fruits. Also, the people who are living in Israel are big and extraordinary. They meant to scare everyone. What were those big people they were referring to? What? You're asking?
What tribe Joshua belonged to?
Ephraim, maybe? Yeah.
That's what I can't remember.
Yeah, Ephraim.
Caleb from Yehuda.
Caleb from Binyamin, I think.
Not Binyamin. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I could look. It's could open the Chumash in a second and look. What were they referring to? Was this in their imagination? No. There were actually very big people in Israel. There were giants. Here's what Numbers says. There we saw the giants, the sons of Anak. Anak in Hebrew means giant. Descend from giants. In our eyes we seemed like grasshoppers, and so we were in their eyes. Rashi says, giant Nephilim descended from Shem Chazai and Azael, who fell from heaven in a generation of Enosh. Here's a little piece of Jewish history you may not know. In the beginning of creation, there were two angels, Shem Chazai and Azael. Shem Chazai and Azael were angels who were up in heavens, and when the people started doing all kinds of nasty things to each other, the two angels proposed to God that He will descend them, and they will be here living with the people and help correct the people's ways. God said, okay. They went down and they saw several women who were particularly beautiful, and they decided that they're giving up on their first mission, and instead of fighting the corruption, they became like good politicians and they joined them. I'm sorry, no quote, this is for politicians. Instead of fighting the corruptions, they joined the corruption. By the way, Azael reminds a lot of people of the word Azazel. Azazel is a mountain, right? The mountain where we have on Yom Kippur, where we send the Sa'ir, the goat, La Azazel, because Azazel comes from Azael. And the reason why we bring an offering to Azazel is to have an atonement, lechaper, on the sins of this Azael. Now, what was the... So obviously this wasn't an imagination. Just like the fruits were very big, there were also very big people. And these people were not ordinary people. They were giants, but even more than that, they were giants who survived things that no one else survived. When describing the giants, the spies were not afraid of their physical force. What meaning their physical force have in front of God? Rather, they stressed these giants have descended from heaven, meaning they are angels from the skies who might have the strength to rebel against God. That reminds a little bit of Christian theology, rebellion against God by angels. Even more so, the giants are from the generation of Enosh, which means they did not die during the flood. So seemingly, even the retribution of God could not gain control of them. So we're talking about angels who are extraordinarily big, but also extraordinarily powerful. We're talking at the time of the flood where everything was wiped out. The only thing that was left was Noah with his family inside the ark. But these giants, they were not affected. They were from the time of Enosh, much before Noah. So seeing these people made them think, this is serious stuff. We're dealing with not only giant people, but even holy and spiritual people. And yet, we still learn from them the story of the Minyan. Here's a piece from the Gemara with regards to Minyan. I'll read it quickly. Brachot 7b. Rabbi Yitzchak said to Rav Nachman, why did the master not come to synagogue to pray? He says, where have you been? Like I tell Marty, why are you not coming to pray? Rav Nachman said to him, I was weak. I'm jet lagged. You can say I'm jet lagged. I was weak and unable to come. Good excuse, right? Rabbi Yitzchak said to him, let the master gather 10 individuals, a prayer quorum, at your home and pray. Okay, if you can't come to shul, so the shul will come to you, right? He says, get 10 people. How easy was it in the time of Talmud? Let me get 10 people. I can tell them that it's not easy, even in the shul, to get 10 people. Anyway, he says, get 10 people to pray. Rav Nachman said to him, it is difficult for me to impose upon the members of the community to come to my home to pray with me. Rabbi Yitzchak suggested another option. The master should tell the congregation to send a messenger when the congregation is praying to come and inform the master, so you may pray at the same time he says, okay, you can't come and you can't bring people over, so check what time they're praying. And at the time they're praying, you'll start your prayer at home. So what is the meaning of that which is written? But as for me, let me close the door.
That's an interesting one. The third option, that even if they are not physically present, doing that is at the same time already has some degree of holiness.
Yeah. So that's what the Talmud goes on and says, what is the meaning of which that is written? But as for me, let my prayer be unto you, Lord, in time of favor. O God, in the abundance of your mercy, answer me with the truth of your salvation. This is a verse from Tehillim. It appears that the individual is praying that his prayers will coincide with a special time of divine favor. When is that time of favor? It is at the time when the congregation is praying. It is beneficial to pray together with the congregation, for God does not fail to respond to the entreaties of the congregation. Rabbi Abba, son of Rabbi Hanina, said that it is derived from here, behold, God is mighty, despise no one. He adopts an alternative reading of the verse, behold, God will not despise the prayer of the mighty, which means the community. So there is a very, very strong implication to praying when the community is praying. There is a time where, so to speak, the gates of heaven are open. When the time of prayer is taking place with the congregation, even those who are not attending, even those who are not able to come, only if they have a really good excuse, otherwise they need to be here, Marty, right? So even those could get a ride over these prayers. More, the Talmud tells us about the story of Rabbi Chia and his sons. The Gemara is telling us a story that Elijah the prophet used to study with Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Eliyahu Hanavi used to study with Rabbi Yehuda. And he told them, I want you to know all the souls are praying every day in the heavens. And God is taking extra care that they will not pray together. That all the souls will not pray together. Because if they will do so, they will have to force God into bringing the redemption. Because this is a big story, right? And Rabbi Yehuda Anasi asks him, okay, you're telling me about the souls. Do we have in this world people who could, so to speak, force God into doing something? And he said, yes. We have Rabbi Chia and his sons. Rabbi Chia and his sons, so they have they're very righteous and they have a very strong stand in the eyes of God. So Rabbi Yehuda Anasi told them, Rabbi Chia and his sons, to come. And he put Rabbi Chia and his sons as the chazanim, as the people who lead the prayer. This was a time of famine. There was no rain. So he said, go to do the prayer. So they started praying, and they said, Mashiva Ruach, the one who brings wind. And as soon as they started that word, wind came. And then they said, Morida Geshem, the one who brings rain. And rain started falling. And then, as soon as they reached the continuous of that prayer, which is Mechayeh Metim, the one who resurrected the dead, the world started to shake, to move, because like they were giving him a sign from above not to continue the prayer, because they will bring the resurrection of the dead before its time. So, obviously they prayed every day. What was so special? These were not people who were gathered from the streets. Rabbi Chia and his sons. Right. But when they prayed together, their strength was multiplied, and God, as if to say, did not have any choice but to answer their prayers favorably. That's also not only with regards to prayer, even studying together, and I'll shock you by saying that, even when 10 Jewish people are just sitting together, no words of prayer, no words of Torah, they're watching a football game, or they're sitting in a coffee shop and chatting and saying silly things, even then, there is a level of divine presence that angels could not partake in. That's what the Tanya brings in Igeret HaKodesh. I heard from my masters that if there were an angel standing in the presence of gathering of 10 Israelites, even if there were no words of Torah between them, an unlimited and infinite fear and awe would then befall him, that angel, from the Shekhinah, from the divine presence that dwells over them, that he would become totally nullified. So 10 Jews together, 10 Jews, regardless of the circumstances, or regardless of what they're doing, 10 Jews together form a level of divinity, of Shekhinah, that angels could not be there. They could just, as soon as they get close, they nullify. Nothing stays. So, what is it behind it? How could a congregation have that strength? What is causing it? Look at what quote from Leviticus. This is when the blessings. 5 of you will pursue 100, and 100 of you will pursue 10,000. Reuben, we have a little problem with the math, right? And your enemies will fall by the sword before you. Rashi says 5 will pursue 100, and 100 of you will pursue 10,000. But isn't this calculation correct? Since 5 will pursue 100, that means each Jew will pursue 20 enemies. Therefore, should Scripture not have written, and 100 of you will pursue 2,000? But the Torah teaches us that there's no comparison between a few who fulfill the Torah and many who fulfill the Torah. And thus, here, the larger the group of pursuers, the higher proportionally is the number of pursued. So, when you have a few people and when you have many people, then it doesn't, it's what is it called, linear? It's exponential, right? Not linear, right? Exponential. So Torah is pretty much telling us that that when you have more people doing the same thing, it has a much more.
Use the language pursue.
ורדפו מכם אחד מעם מכם. Yeah, our enemies. Yeah, that's chasing our enemies. Yeah.
Question about going back to nullifying the presence of the angel.
Yeah.
Why would you want to nullify the presence of the angel? Isn't an angel a divine entity? Isn't it good to have him around?
You don't want to nullify, but the angels can't. The angel can't withstand the amount of holiness. You would think angel is a divine creature. It's God's servant. You would think what more spiritual you can have than an angel. And here it tells you that when you have 10 Jews around, it's more spiritual and higher and holier than an angel. So the angel just can't draw near. You don't want to nullify him, he just can't come because it's just too much for him.
Or we used to, you remember the prayers at the beginning of Shabbat? We invite the angels,
Right.
but we say goodbye to them.
Right away. We ask them to come, to give us a blessing, and off you go. Very quick, straight to the point, right? Come, give us a blessing, off you go. Well, the reason is because they have to go visit other houses, so they're quite busy. But I don't know what's the excuse of the last house. But there is never a last house because of the fact that there's Jews literally all around the world. So angels are quite busy throughout the Shabbat with going and greeting Jews wherever they may be. Here's a word in Hebrew. The word tzibur. Tzibur is a congregation, and it's brought in Torah Menachem from different scriptures. The word tzibur in Hebrew is an acronym for tzadikim, benonim, vereshaim. Righteous people, intermediate, and wicked people. So a congregation is necessarily made of different types of people. It's never unified, what's it called? Like never the same thing, everybody the same. It's not like that. It's a compilation of different types of people. That's what a congregation is made of. The Rebbe says congregation means 10 people, not only that, but also 10 types of people. As the scripture mentions, you stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God, your tribal heads, your elder and your official, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from wood chopper to water drawer, in spite of the differences between them all, they all unite to form one people and one congregation. So a congregation is made out of different people who come from different backgrounds, who has different standing in their spiritual life, probably also in their physical life.
Can I learn that even the people who do not qualify for the minimum of the quorum qualify as member of congregations when the minimum quorum is met?
You mean like children and women and
wives?
Yes, absolutely, because they enjoy the fact that the gates are open when a prayer is recited by the Minyan. This brings us to the story of the Baal Shem Tov, which has the same nature of, of what you just said. This was in the time of Rosh Hashanah, and hundreds of the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov were waiting for him to approach to get to his seat before the prayer in the night of Rosh Hashanah. So the Baal Shem Tov walks in, but instead of going to his seat, he stands by the door. He stands by the door, and he stands there for more than 1 hour. You imagine everybody's waiting for him to take his seat in order for the prayer to commence, and instead he stands by the door for 1 hour. And then he approaches his seat, and they start the prayer and so on. Later that day, he retold the Hasidim, the disciples, what happened, and he told them as follows. He says, there was a Jewish person from this city, from this shtetl, who left about 30 years ago. He was of a religious family, and he left and he completely forsaked Judaism, and he married a non-Jewish woman, and he had non-Jewish children, and he was completely off. He cut himself off of the Jewish people. And today, he happened to come here. He happened to come back to his hometown, and he saw everybody running around. You know, it's the day before, the day of Rosh Hashanah, the day before, everybody's running. There's 2 days of holiday. Everybody's getting ready, shopping. So he stops one of the children. He says, "What's going on?" So the child says to him in a simplicity that's only of a child, he says, "What do you mean? Tonight is Rosh Hashanah." And he says, God is going to sit on his throne. He's going to open the books and will determine our destiny for the coming year. That's what the child retold this person. So this Jew heard, and it caught him. But he said, what the child said with such simplicity, that tonight is the night that God is going to sit on his throne and look at the books and determine what's going to be with us, captured him completely. And he started remembering. All these memories floated from his head. He started remembering his father cleaning the head of the fish before Rosh Hashanah, and his mother cutting the pomegranate, putting on the table, and preparing the plates for the festive meal, and all the children, including himself, going to synagogue. And he decided that he's not going to continue on his journey, but rather he would stay here for the holiday. And when I entered, Baal Shem Tov says, when I entered the shul, I noticed this person who didn't have a seat, so he was standing next to the entrance door, and that person, that Jewish fellow, took a prayer book. He doesn't know the prayer that well. He left at a very young age, but he started saying in the prayer, he says, "Oh God, I've sinned in front of you, I've sinned before you." And he started saying all the sins that he had committed. He started retelling in an undertone, in a quiet voice, but enough for me to be able to listen a little bit. And he started counting his sins and saying it, and he was saying, between counting the sins, he says with a real, real intention from inside, how could I ask for forgiveness about all that I've done? How could I ever, even I regret, how could I ever return? How could I ever come back to who I was? The only thing I could do is just tell you my wrongdoings, and you do with it whatever you do with it. So the Baal Shem Tov says, I was there. He was by the entrance. I saw him praying. And while I'm seeing him praying, I also see that in the worlds above, the angels are gathering around this Jew and are taking the words that are coming from his mouth, the words he utters, are taking it to the best prayer, to be the best prayer in front of God. So I realized that there's no reason for me now to pray, because nobody's going to listen to my prayer. Everybody's too busy with this fellow who's now repenting. So I stayed by the door for another hour. I listened to his prayer until we finished the prayer. Then I said, okay, now there's room for me. Until now, nobody could have heard me, right? So Baal Shem Tov realized what was going on. So let's return to what the spies were. The spies, they said, we can't go in. Why? Because there's giants, it's an extraordinary land. But this was just a cover-up story. They were not afraid of the giants. Those people witnessed God's hand in Egypt, in the desert, splitting the sea, bringing the Torah. What are giants for them? Nothing. This was a cover story. They were not afraid of the giants. They didn't care about the giants. But they wanted to stay in the desert. Why did they want to stay in the desert? They thought that, which wasn't far from true, that going into Israel would require them to work hard. In Israel, you have to work hard. It's also current, right? Also today it's true. You have to work hard. They were in the desert. I'll describe you how it was in the desert. They were marching in the desert. There was a pillar of cloud, a pillar of smoke that was going in front of them, that was straight in everything, right? There was valleys, there were mountains. He would kill all the snakes and scorpions. They would march on a flat road. They had the pillar of cloud that was with them that made their clothing grow with them and wash them while they're still on. With all the high-tech, development, the startup, I don't think anybody invented, not yet, a shirt that washes itself while you're still wearing it. I wouldn't want to be the guinea pig trying it, but the pillar of cloud, Amud Anan, was washing their clothes, and the clothes grew with them. Let's look at their diet. They had a well, the well of Miriam, that was traveling with them. Would you imagine? They had a well, which is a hole in the ground, and as they were walking, the hole in the ground went with them. They always had supply of fresh water. They had bread from heaven. Manna came from heaven every day. You had what you needed. You could think of something. You think of caviar, and it has a flavor of whatever you want to think. You think of stinky tofu. Maybe it had the flavor, no smell, thank God. Otherwise we would have found some evidence to that. But whatever you think in your mind, you would have the flavor. So they had food, they had water, they had clothing, they had no concerns, no worries. They were protected. God was going with them. But going into Israel, you have to work, you have to plant the seeds and harvest and pray for rain, and you need to establish the country, and you have little time left to study Torah and to devote yourself to spirituality. And they thought in their mind that, why would we want to engage with that? We'd rather have what we know, having spiritual life, zero worries, zero issues, no problems, no challenges. Yeah, it's a little hot in the desert, okay. But nobody had air conditioning back then, so I guess it was very different, and it wasn't so different between that and anywhere else. And we have that also in our world sometimes. People think, if I work hard, then I won't have enough time to study Torah. I won't have enough time for my family. I won't have enough. So what then? So then you'll drop off everything. You just leave everything behind. That's wrong. That's not what to do. Here's what the Rebbe explains. What was the mistake of the spies? The Talmud learns the concept of Minyan from the spies allude to what is explained in the inner parts of the Torah. The spies were actually on a very high spiritual level. Their reluctance to enter Israel comes from their fear that they wouldn't be able to cope with what will be required for them. They prefer to stay in the desert without having to do with the bothers of livelihood that will prevent them from studying Torah. Of course they were mistaken, since this is exactly what God wants from us. God did not create us to be angels. God did not want us to get away from the world, to close ourselves shut behind doors and to say, I don't want to deal with anything. I just want to learn and pray and serve God with everything. No, serving God means going out there, meeting people, speaking to them, going to work, having a social circle, influencing people, impacting, bringing the light of Torah to other people. That's what we're here for. If God would want us to stay shut and to have zero contact with the external world, He wouldn't create us. He had these angels, right? The angels are there. They're hovering above. They're doing whatever they need to do. They have no lust, no desires, no issues. Whatever God wants for them is completely, immediately fulfilled without any issues. So what's the big deal? That's not what God wants us from. He wants from us to be here and to do things that are hard, that are difficult on us. So, just like, with regards to the Baal Shem Tov, we said the story, with that time that this Jewish person who couldn't find the right words, but he gave all of him, everything he had, he offered to God, and that prayer was accepted by God. And by the way, between the three prayers of the day, The prayer that is the most relevant is the one that's called mincha. It's in the afternoon. Morning service, everyone could do it. You just, if you have to be at work at X, here's the formula. So do X minus 30 minutes. And just, have 30 minutes before you wake up and you pray. Evening prayer is practically the whole night, whenever you come back from work. But there's one prayer that is done in the middle of the day. That's the prayer of mincha, the afternoon prayer. And that's what the Talmud says. Rabbi Chelbo said, Rav Huna said, one must always be vigilant with regard to the afternoon prayer. As Elijah's prayer was only answered in the afternoon prayer, as it stated, and it was at the time of the afternoon offering that Elijah the prophet came near, and he said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known on this day, you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, Lord, answer me, that these people will know that you, Lord, are God. Because Elijah was answered in the afternoon prayer, it is a particular significance. So, the afternoon prayer is important. Here's something a little more contemporary from Hayom Yom. The Alter Rebbe taught, shortly after he came from the Yozna, one must always, leolam, be, what is this? Scrupulous. Zahir. About the mincha davening, the special quality of mincha over shachrit and ma'ir is that it comes in the middle of the day when people are occupied and busy with their personal affairs, yet they interrupt to daven mincha. So mincha, the prayer, is actually very significant. It comes right in the middle of the day. This is a picture from a hospital in Israel that they do mincha. You see all these surgeons are praying. One of them is holding, the first one is actually a Chabad Siddur is holding.
That was prison ward.
Really?
That's
Oh, no, these are doctors. These are doctors.
How do you know it's a Chabad Siddur specifically?
I think so, by the blue. By the blue.
The color?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. And we can end with a story. Remember we told the story about Professor Velva Green. Remember the guy with the hot dogs, right? That he was waiting for the flight and he didn't have his kosher food. So Velva Green, he was a very distinguished professor in Minnesota. And in the 60s, the Chabad Rabbi Feller came to Minnesota, and he was advised by everyone to try and contact Professor Green. And they told him, if you'll hook up with him, there's going to be many doors that will open in front of you, because he's well connected with everyone. So Green was working those days. He was working he was a member of the team of NASA to check whether there's life on Mars. We said it last time. Green was working there in a classified military place. What is it called? I don't know. A classified military facility, right? And one day he gets a phone call from Feller who wants to meet with him. So Green says, I'll give you $36. And Feller says, it's okay, but that's not what I want to meet you for. It's not about the money. And he says, okay, he was willing to persuade him. He still is. Rabbi Moshe Feller is very old now. He's probably in his 80s, or 70s, 80s. So, but he still's very eloquent. He's a has good power of persuasion. So they managed to set up a meeting, and he went to that military facility. He had to go through security clearance. Long story short. And when they met each other, they started arguing. Velva Green was giving him a hard time. Professor Green was giving him a hard time. And he says to him, I'll give you some efficient advice. Why don't you change the white shirt and black jacket to something a little more nice, like how about red or orange, green? He was giving him a hard time. And the meeting was in the afternoon. And then all of a sudden, Rabbi Feller says to his host, Velva Green, mind you, it's within that military facility, he says sorry. He doesn't say anything. He says sorry. He just says to him sorry. He gets up of his seat. He goes to the wall. He takes out a siddur, and he starts praying mincha. It was in the afternoon. It was the sun was about to set. It was just before sunset. So he take a few steps. He gets to the sun, and he starts praying mincha. And Velvet Green was shocked. To get that meeting, was very, it took a lot of effort on Feller's side, on the rabbi's side, and on Green's side to host them in that facility, in that military facility. And obviously their time was limited. But all of a sudden, without just no introduction, he just gets up and he starts praying to the wall. So Green was just, he was overwhelmed, he couldn't take it. So he says, what's going on? Right? He waited for him patiently to finish, and he says, what's going on? So he says, it was getting late. I had to say my prayer. I realized our meeting was getting elaborated. So I just decided I have to say my prayer. So Green, in the beginning, he got insulted. It's not so respectful when you meet someone and then you just go to the side and start praying. But after Feller explained to him that it was the sun about to set and he had to do. So Green called his wife. At that very moment, he called his wife and he says to her, you remember that we once read about the Jews in the time of Tach V'Tat, about 800 years ago, that they were willing to sacrifice their life in order to not worship idols, in order to not forsake Judaism. And when we read those stories, we were thinking, he tells his wife, whether or not these people, there is someone like that is still alive, that is still amongst us. So today I met someone like that. That's what he said about Moshe Feller. Someone who put his Judaism and his prayer at a more significant place, at a more, his priority is higher to those things than to other things. So he said, today I met someone like these people, like these guys. So from all the above, what we could summarize is that indeed the source of prayer from Minyan comes from the spies. The spies who initially we depicted them as wrong people. Yes, they did wrong, but their intentions were well. But sometimes in life your intentions is not enough. Sometimes you have to do the right thing, even if you intend on doing the right thing, but if you end up doing the wrong thing, then it's not going to help much, right? So the spies had a good intention. They thought we want to devote ourselves to spirituality, to God, to godliness. We don't want anything to do with the physical world. We don't want to go into Israel. We have to work hard. We need to, plant and harvest and all these things. We don't want that. So their intention was well, but they were wrong because we are not supposed to stay in Israel. We're supposed to get into Israel and do the hard work because that's what we're here for. And then that's the reason why we could derive from these people the importance of Minyan, because they had what it takes to form a quorum, to form a Minyan. And through that, we can understand why the prayer in Minyan is more significant. And as we saw from the Talmud, even if someone is prevented from going to shul, but having his prayer at the time where the congregation prays also has a big importance. And of course, when we are with that token, I could say that this coming Shabbat, we are trying to make a Minyan because a member of our community needs to say Kaddish for his father. It's in fact the Israeli ambassador, Ashi. He lost his father several years ago, and on Shabbat is the Yortzeit. So I would urge you, hey Marty, I would urge you to come and pray with us on Shabbat.
These things require coordination. When during the Shabbat? When during 25 hours of Shabbat?
Morning prayer, 10 o'clock. Marty, we're just saying the importance of prayer, and somebody needs to say Kaddish for their father. So we're trying to organize a Minyan. So I hope you manage to get enough sleep until Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning, so we could see you for the Minyan. Okay, that sums up that. Any questions? No questions.